Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company on MLS ID, number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the afternoon. Joining me today is not only Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor, but Broad Street Hockey's own Kelly Hinkle. Welcome aboard, Hinks.
Hi.
Glad to have you back this week. It's always fun when we get 2 days of Kelly.
Thanks. I like being here.
Only thing better than 2 days of Kelly, 3 days of Kelly.
Oh, Charles.
So
Maybe even 4. Who could say?
I mean, it might be too many. Let's not get crazy.
So yesterday, at a certain point, someone's going to be like, these are your work hours, Kelly.
Kelly gets a lunch break, all right?
Okay. So yesterday, we took a look at Charlie's Die Hard Only article, grading the Flyers forwards. And guess what, fam? Today, we're looking at the defense and goalies. It's a very simple formula on this Thursday afternoon. There's fewer defensemen, so I can't imagine it takes quite as long as yesterday.
Yeah.
But it was, looking back, I can't believe the grade you gave Nick Delorier.
I'm really mad about this.
I just like, what do you want from him?
Your explanation, I mean, it calls into question. It's one of these things. So, like, this always comes up when we do our 25 under 25. I'm sure you remember doing this. Mm-hmm. Like, what is your ranking metric? Like, how do you decide how you're going to rank these guys? Is it based on expectation? Like, could Nick Delorier get an A and Travis Konechny also get an A because they lived up to their individual expectations? Like, do you grade them based on performance comparative to other people on the team or just in a bubble? Like, there's just so many ways you could do these things, which is why they're so fun and interesting.
No, grades are always fun.
I could not justify giving a player who ostensibly is being paid to play hockey a good grade when he played the hockey, he was actively poor.
Haters gonna hate is what they say.
Led the league in fights, has the highest rated fight on hockeyfights.com. This is exactly what he's getting paid to do.
For you, you are paying, in theory, if you were signing the checks, you'd be signing the checks solely for the entertainment value of the fighting. I personally would much rather watch hockey goals being scored.
Well, then you need to go out and sign somebody else. That's not why he probably scored the last goal of his career in that game that Sean Couturier was robbed of an assist in.
I don't think that's true.
God bless.
He'll score more.
It'll hit him in the butt at least.
He's got time left on this contract.
Yeah,
he had 2 more years.
He had time left on his contract this year, and they stopped playing it.
Okay, maybe this is a philosophical disagreement because I think players should be paid to play hockey, and if they happen to fight in the process of playing hockey, that's great. I enjoy watching fighting. But if they are being paid to fight, then that is you purposely putting your team at a competitive disadvantage if that guy cannot also play hockey. Just saying.
I don't know.
It is a philosophical disagreement, I believe.
I'm just saying. Ryan Reeves about to win the cup.
You're not wrong.
What? That's objectively false.
Is it, Charlie?
You're not wearing the Leaf shirt this time,
Not
Kelly.
today.
All right. So we are
see if they win Game 6.
We are going to now grade the defensemen and goalies. And when I say goalies, I mean Sam Ersson.
Singular goalie.
Because like
one goalie.
In your article, and we'll do it now, like Carter Hart gets an A because what's even the point of grading him?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you ain't coming back. So,
yeah.
You know.
And also, it's very difficult to, like, his season obviously is completely overshadowed by the reason why he didn't finish the season with the team, which is he was charged with something really, really bad. So it's kind of like, why am I going to evaluate your hockey when that is such a secondary aspect of the story of your season?
Yeah, and you look at the other goalies, Cal Peterson, 4 starts, Felix Sandstrom, 3, Ivan Fedotov, 1.
Yeah, my rule was...
They didn't combine for 10.
Yeah, my rule in terms of my overall evaluation, because the one guy who I considered evaluating, this would have been yesterday, but he just didn't quite make the cutoff. My cutoff was 20 games played. The one guy who almost made that cutoff was Oli Lexell. He played 18. He didn't quite make 20, because I originally was like, I'm going to evaluate him. And then I started looking at it, and I decided I really can't the sample just wasn't big enough. I don't know.
Very little occurred.
Yeah, I don't know what grade to give him, so let me just make the cutoff 20, and it makes it so I don't have to evaluate Cal Peterson and Fedotov.
Yeah,
why?
Just thinking of when I thought things about Ula Liksell this year, I was like, oh, he did it. Okay. Right. They were 3 times. I was like, oh, that was cool. Good for him. So what's the point? I'm glad we didn't have to do that.
Actually, now that I'm looking at it, I did break my own rule because I graded Eric Johnson. He only plays 17 games, but whatever.
Wow. Charlie hates Ule Liksell.
But he's coming back. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's get to the defensive goalies, and we're going to start with the highest graded defenseman, as we did with the forwards yesterday. Mr. Barry Ashby Trophy himself. Travis Sanheim leads the way with an A-. Charlie giving him the A, but throwing in that minus there. I will say, the way he started.
Let's put that highest rated defenseman with a little asterisk.
With an highest rated defenseman.
We're going to get to another guy with a higher grade later.
Highest rated defenseman who finished the season with the team. Sanheim gets an A-. The way he started the year, it was like, holy shit, is he going to get Norris votes?
Yeah.
And around Christmas, leading up to that break, Torts was like, listen, we got to back up his minutes. He said as much out loud.
Yeah.
This is getting out of hand. We're playing him 26 minutes a night. We shouldn't do this to most guys, let alone someone who's never done it before. Yeah. But he didn't. He was, for the most part, impressive. There were dips in his play throughout the season. I wouldn't say he was incredibly consistent. But for the most part, I think he really raised the floor. We've seen him have peaks and valleys, and it's like, oh, shit, he sucks. I don't remember ever thinking he sucks this year.
I thought the one point of the year where he appeared briefly to be turning back into bad Sanheim was in January. So Torts starts pulling back his minutes around the midpoint of December because I think he noticed the Sanheim was dipping. January, you look at his numbers, 2 assists in 14 games, a -8. That was when you were seeing the old Sanheim come back. I think he benefited a lot from the All-Star break. Mm-hmm. I think that gave him a chance to kind of reset. Then he was pretty good the rest of the year. It was just that he was very clearly playing hurt.
Yeah.
He got banged up pretty early in February. He then got banged up again even more in early March. March was when it got real bad. Was when he was playing through multiple things. The skating burst was gone. But to his credit,
they ran out of guys.
I thought that despite the fact that he was pretty clearly playing, my guess, somewhere in the 70 to 80% range, he hung in there. He was still pretty good given the fact that he was not himself. Mm-hmm. I thought he found a way to stay effective despite the fact that his best physical tool, his skating, was not there for a month. He still found a way to take on a lot of minutes for a team battling for a playoff spot in the heart of a playoff race. And I think that, to me, was what pushed me over. Because I thought about giving him a B+. I was like, does he deserve it? But I thought his play over the final month and a half of the year, given that he was playing through injury, given the fact that the stakes were higher and he found a way to stay effective, that pushed me into the A- range.
I think that makes sense. And like Bill said, I do think if nothing else this season, he raised the floor because last year there were points at which you were like, ooh, who is he? Is he not good? Is he are we expecting too much out of him? But I don't think we ever were, really. I mean, there have been conversations going back to the early years where it was like, is he better than Ivan Provorov? Is he a top pair defenseman? What do we actually have in Travis Sanheim? And I think this year, while it wasn't perfect, he did prove that he can, in fact, take those top pair minutes and be an effective NHL defenseman. And that, I think, is a huge, just piece of information that we have now.
Kelly, I think you should take a little bit of a victory lap here because the question, as you hinted, for a few years was, what if Travis Sanheim is actually better than Ivan Provorov?
I did be saying
I think we now have legitimate evidence that Travis Sanheim is better than Ivan Provorov. Because Travis Sanheim was functionally the number 1 on the Flyers this year, which was the role that Ivan Provorov played for years. And Ivan Provorov was functionally the number 2 or number 3. I guess he was the number 1 when Werenski went down in Columbus. But Sanheim significantly outplayed Provorov this year. Mm-hmm. And maybe you could argue that Columbus was in a worse situation. But you know what would have made that situation better? If Ivan Provorov would have played like a number 1 defenseman.
Yeah.
Guess where these teams finished neck and neck at the bottom of the league last year?
Yeah.
With Ivan Provorov here.
Yeah.
Without him, the team, if they win one more goddamn game, makes the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I know you can't just, one team's good and one team, but like, we know what this defense used to look like a year ago. Remember? Like, it stunk.
I think there was always a feeling that getting rid of Provorov was going to be addition by subtraction in the room, but it ended up also being addition by subtraction on the ice.
You always said, like, they knew it was a problem, his personality versus the majority of the team, but it was like, on the ice, we don't have anybody.
Who's going to take those minutes?
Yeah, it's like, you're rebuilding. Who cares?
Yeah. That was our point.
But like, you saw it go down. It was like, actually, Travis Sanheim can. And I always thought there was like more to Ivan Provorov, and I guess I was just wrong about what his ceiling was. Many people were. But when I think about Sanheim and Provy now, it's like Sanheim at least had measurable tools. Like, there were things that you like, he's an amazing skater. Like, so much of it with Provorov, I guess, was like intangible. Like, he never misses games.
He pushes tires up the mountain. He can
play these minutes. He never misses the games. And like, he's got this IQ. And then when it was like, does he have the IQ? And when it was, it might not be what we thought it was. You pulled back the layers. Like, what is there?
I think, and I will say this, I think that there is an alternate universe where Ivan Provorov maybe gets drafted by another team and is developed better, and with the tools that he has, is a significantly better player today than he actually is in reality. Because I think that the tools were there. I do think his hockey IQ is very strong. He's obviously a really hard worker. He's extremely strong. He wins puck battles. He's a good passer. There's a lot of really good tools there to shape a number one defenseman. I think the worst thing that happened to Ivan Provorov in retrospect was the fact that he immediately was given the role of number one defenseman, because then he started to believe his own hype.
Yep.
And once he started to believe his own hype and started to believe that he was beyond reproach, both from the coaching staff and in the room, then it was over.
Yeah.
Because then he became functionally, and not in terms of like doing what the coach told him to do. He always did that. But he became uncoachable in the sense that he was not going to accept that there were things he actually needed to improve upon.
Yeah.
That it was all everyone else, it wasn't him. And I couldn't, like, I know I've said this before, but like, I could envision a scenario where like, if he was selected by like the Kings and immediately joined a room where like Drew Doughty was the guy.
Yeah, he was like, quit fucking around, kid.
And it's like, there's no universe where a 19-year-old Ivan Provorov could go into that room and believe that he was better than Drew Doughty. And I think he probably would have developed better because he probably would have had a little bit more humility. But when you spend 3 years being told by everyone, and us in the media and the fan base are, I guess, partially to blame for this, like, we pumped him up as, he's our number one. He's a future Norris guy. I think he just started to believe it. And then when push came to shove and he was going to need to actually make tangible improvements to his game to get there, it then became, no, I'm fine. I've been the number one guy getting 25 minutes a night since I was 19 years old. It's everybody else's fault.
At 19 years old, he was tasked with like propping up one of the highest paid players on the team that the entire fan base fucking hated.
Yeah.
So like, I can see how it can happen.
Thank you for your
service.
service.
This does get to like a bigger picture thing about the Flyers organization. We'll see. Yeah, maybe they could have just drafted better in the Hextall years and everything since then. There's almost no way none of these guys, like, we were wrong about everyone. Like,
no, there's
the
a real
developmental
development
process clearly needed upgrading on top of, like, so many other things. We will find out, I guess, with this next wave of guys.
I guess we'll see if they've actually improved
this is a thing that they've actually improved. Because, like, nobody lived up to what we thought they would.
Yeah.
Maybe Sanheim now, and the dude's pushing fucking 30.
I think eventually, like, what Travis Konechny is right now, that is what I thought he was going to be. However, it took a 2-year detour of him sucking for a little bit before he got there. And maybe if you have a better developmental environment, he doesn't kind of stink in 2021 and 2022.
And to get this back to Travis Sanheim, I should have emphasized the last name. The idea that, like, okay, Provorov would have been like, there's nothing I need to work on. The fact that we saw Sanheim make dramatic improvements in his game, and like we joke about he's the 2-time most improved. Like
Could have been a third.
Could have been a third. He's made improved, but the fact that he's willing to work on stuff and kind of take the coaching and be like, no, I need to be a little stronger if I'm going to play these minutes. I need to be able to do that. Well, he took the coaching and he had the best year of his career.
Yeah. We have a super chat from VNet Singh. Jensen Kelly, does Sanheim stay on the right D side? Seems like York and Drysdale and Sanheim and Risto are not a bad top 4. We'll get to Risto in a second, but I do believe that they think he is a long-term right side defenseman now.
Okay.
I think they know they can move him back to the left, that it's an option. He obviously did it for the bulk of his career. I get the sense that everybody there thinks he's a better right side D-man. I also don't necessarily think that Ristolainen is part of the long-term plan anymore. So, VNet, I get your... I mean, I'm not saying... This isn't anything new.
Insider
I'm not reporting anything. Like, it's abundant. Like the guy can't fucking play games.
Well,
played 30 games this year.
He could play more next year.
Could he?
Maybe.
He'll play a ton of games for the Maple Leafs.
Yes.
But in all honesty,
the dream.
Yeah, I guess in theory those pairs could work if Drysdale takes a big step forward, but it's harder to find right side defensemen than it is to find left side defensemen. And if you have a guy in Travis Sanheim who showed this year he can be a clearly above average top 4 defenseman on the right side, I'm not going to rush to move him back to the left.
I almost want to staple him to the right. I always thought Sanheim was probably better than I gave him credit for, mostly because I trust Charlie's evaluation. But I just never really thought he was that good. It's like, all right, he's out there. He's doing the hockey, I guess.
He's doing the hockey.
I don't really see anything in him. And this year, he looked like a very good player.
He did.
I want that. So I want to keep him doing what he's doing.
Fair.
Yeah, it seems like it would be kind of silly after this season to make any changes, really.
Last year, he got benched. Yeah. He got benched in his hometown playing over there. And this year, he was an integral part of the defense to the point where even when he was hurt, it was like, buddy, you can't come out. Sorry. We fucking need you.
Yep.
On a playoff team almost. Like on a team fighting for the playoffs up to game 82.
Yeah.
This is the best I could have hoped for from Travis Sanheim after like the last 3 years. So I need him over there.
So is it really just that mid-season dip that took it from A to A- for you?
Yeah, and then there's also the fact that, and this has been a recurring problem with Sanheim to the point where this is why if I was structuring my ideal Flyers defense, I would not have him on the top pair. I think he is a clear-cut top 4 defenseman. He's back to being in that 2-3 kind of true talent spot where I would put him ideally on a defense that I think can compete for cups. He's a guy where, because I think he's still going to be prone to the big mistake, if you look at his like expected goals for percentage, he's going to be around like 53%, which is good. You want to be over 50%. And then his actual goals for percentage, like the actual goals that happen on the ice, are always lower. That happened again this year. I just think he's a guy where I think he can certainly take the minutes. He's got all the physical ability, but I do think in an ideal world, you want to shelter him a little bit from the toughest matchups because he's always going to be prone to the big turnover, the big defensive breakdown. And you probably, like in an ideal world, you don't want him taking 60% of the shifts against Connor McDavid. Maybe he can take 20, but like you don't want him taking most of them because he's prone to those big breakdowns. And I don't think that fully went away this year.
Okay.
It is like a tough... Like, physically, nobody can skate with Connor McDavid. But he is, like, the one guy with the tools that you're like, well, he might be able to keep up with him.
Yeah.
Or at least, but, yeah, he's also the guy who's going to, somehow hit him in the ass and bounce to McDavid in the slot. How?
And
I don't know, but it happens to him.
I picked McDavid. Like, you could say that, like, I could say Artemi Panarin.
No,
like, whoever the team superstar is, I don't necessarily want Sanheim taking the bulk of the shifts against him in a game. Yeah. I want him taking a lot of shifts because he can do it and he can do it well. I still view him as a guy who in my ideal world is probably my number 3. Yeah. Like, he can be a 2 if you've got a damn good 1 next to him. Or like a 2 in the sense of like the Chemo Timonen, where like Pronger's the 1 and he's on one pair, Tiemann is the 2 and he's on the other pair, and Tiemann had the second most minutes, even if he wasn't taking the absolute toughest matchups every game because Pronger was.
Absolutely. All right, before we move on, we are one defenseman in. Way to go, guys. Remember when I was like, this is going to be shorter today? It's that time of year. Birds are chirping. Grass is growing.
Go Birds.
Stanley Cup playoffs are happening. And that means eyes are watering and throats are scratchy. Everyone out there who's been listening to the show for the last few weeks and months knows I'm an allergy sufferer. You can probably hear it in my voice today. Pollen from trees, grasses, and weeds are a primary cause of seasonal allergies. Symptoms flare when the pollen you're allergic to is in the air, and it's possible to be allergic to just one or several types of pollen. It sucks. Take it from me. But there are steps you can take to help alleviate some of your allergy symptoms. First thing you got to do, go to Rite Aid Rewards. Go to Rite Aid, sign up for rewards emails at riteaid.com/rewards to receive email pollen alerts for your area. And if the pollen count's high, try to stay indoors. Keep the windows closed and run your air conditioner. And remove shoes and coats near your door to minimize tracking pollen inside your home. Take a shower before bed to help wash away any pollen from your skin and hair. And of course, you can visit Rite Aid to stock up on over-the-counter allergy solutions like nasal rinse and antihistamines. Still not enough relief? Ask a Rite Aid pharmacist if a different type of allergy medication, like a decongestant, might be necessary. You can always ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for recommendations on way to get relief during allergy season. Visit your local Rite Aid today, stock up on allergy relief, or catch up on immunizations for RSV, shingles, and more. Walk in or schedule a vaccine appointment at riteaid.com. All right, we go to the second highest graded defenseman who finished the season with the team, Mr. Nick Seeler. I was really, really surprised.
I kind of was
that
too.
He finished second here.
I know, and we're going to get to the guy third because
Yeah.
I know that the perception of Cam York's season is very, very positive. The numbers do not share that evaluation, and we'll get to that in a second. Whereas with Nick Seeler, I do think that the injury at the end of the year it's allowed people to forget just how good he was for most of the year.
And like the injury coincides with Shawn Walker going away.
Right.
And then he comes back and he doesn't have the dude who he played all that awesome hockey with for the first 68 games of the year, whatever it was. So Nick Seeler gets a B+ from Charlie O'Connor. I don't know if I can disagree. Like, I have no idea how to evaluate Nick Seeler. He's just like, it's a lot like Nick Delorier. Like, what do I expect out of him? But given what I expected out of Nick Seeler to start the season, B+ might be low.
Yeah, but one guy is good at hockey, and the other
I just mean like
Which one are you referring
I expected Nick Seeler. Like my highest possible expectation is dude who plays on the third pair and you don't mind him. And he was considerably better than that this year. Like, I think B+ might be low for Nick Seeler.
He was a second pair defenseman this year.
Yeah, and like effective.
Right. There's not a universe in which anyone ahead of this season would have said that like Nick Seeler would have been one of the most sought after defensemen at the trade deadline because his season had been so good. Like no one would have predicted
They
this.
re-signed him for probably a little more than is like advisable. And I'm all right with it. I don't think it's terrible. I'm fine.
My viewpoint is that purely from a value standpoint, I think that is a good value contract because I think this season and last season, frankly, he's provided more value than the cap hit that the Flyers gave him, and significantly more to the point where even if you account for the aging curve, I think that will ultimately be viewed as a good contract. Now, whether the Flyers are the team that should have given it to him is another story, but if he would have went and signed somewhere else, he probably would have signed for more because he just likes to be in Philly. This is the place where he revitalized his career. I just think with Seeler, I think it was totally reasonable after not this just concluded season, but the season before, when he established himself as a perfectly fine third pair defenseman. I think it was totally reasonable for fans and analysts to look at that season and say the Flyers should sell high on Nick Seeler because he's been a plug-in, healthy scratch guy for pretty much his entire career. He's a number 7 defenseman who had one season where he looked like a good third pair guy. That's probably not who he really is. The Flyers should trade him before he crashes back to earth. That was, frankly, my expectation. My expectation was that he was probably going to crash back to earth and was going to turn back into a number 7. My hope was that he was going to stay a legitimately good third pair defenseman. I am blown away that he didn't just stay as a legitimately good third pair defenseman. He became a legitimately good second pair defenseman.
Yes, he did.
Did Walker help? Yeah, Walker helped. Walker was the better of those two guys, but it's not like Seeler sucked when he was with guys like Sanheim and Drysdale, I guess with the exception of that one really awful game at the end of the year.
Well, they were like -5.
When he was with Risto, he was fine. The only guy he really struggled with was Zamula, but like, I don't think that highly of Egor Zamula either.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to him. But to me, Seeler, yes, he was helped by Shawn Walker. It was a pairing that worked for both of them. But I didn't watch that pairing and think that Nick Seeler was getting dragged to relevancy by Shawn Walker. I think Shawn Walker was playing great hockey and Nick Seeler was playing good hockey. He was a perfectly acceptable number four defenseman this year. And not only did he prove that the previous year wasn't a 1 year out of nowhere spike, that he's actually gotten significantly, measurably better as a player in his late 20s. Props to him.
No, I think we've all been impressed with Seeler, and now the question is replicating it.
He already I mean, I guess maybe he might not replicate this, but now I'm looking at next season thinking that the worst case scenario is he goes back to where he was two seasons ago when he was a perfectly good third pair defenseman. I'm fine with that.
We saw a little preview at the end of the year of a pair that seems to make a lot of sense on paper.
Oh, Seeler Drysdale.
Seeler Drysdale.
Yeah.
It did not go well.
Well, okay, to be fair, Drysdale.
They're both like Seeler's coming back from injury. Drysdale was playing through a core muscle, and his whole thing is speed. And guess what?
Was not healthy.
Nipples
ever,
to knees, something's ripped.
Right. Yeah.
And Seeler wasn't healthy either.
No, both
he came
were
back
hurt.
from a broken foot.
Like, I do think that pair has a lot of potential, and I think a whole off season and a whole camp, like if they chain them together, they could get something there.
I think they showed flashes. There were games where I thought they looked pretty good. It was just that Montreal game lingers in everyone's heads.
Oh, it was
because
real bad.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't just bad. Like they looked like they weren't an NHL caliber player.
No,
it was
bad.
awful.
Yeah.
I think there's potential there.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is like my dream, and I don't quite know how they would do this, I guess it would probably involve them trading for someone in the offseason. My dream would be start out the season with Drysdale Seeler as your third pair. And basically start out Drysdale, because you are now, next year, you are going to be essentially developing Jamie Drysdale. That is going to be one of the low-key big stories of the season is, okay, we're going to start from scratch with this guy, and we're going to try to turn him into the player we think he can be. I would like it if that starts out with him getting third pair usage, him getting sheltered minutes with a good partner in Nick Seeler, getting the kind of usage that we know Nick Seeler can thrive in. Like we know Nick Seeler can handle second pair minutes. We know he can kill it in third pair minutes. I would like to see that start out as the third pair if you could possibly find a way to pull it off, and then let them earn additional ice time and harder minutes. Because I guess, I mean, if you bring back Risto, I would assume that York Sanheim is your first pair. You bring back Risto, I mean, maybe you throw Zamula to the Wolves and say, hey, guys, see what you can do, because we care much more about developing Drysdale better than developing you better. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I guess the ideal world would be you trade for like a Chikrin or something. And I'm not even saying, I don't even love Jacob Chikrin, but just like the concept of a guy.
A guy who can, it's almost Provorov-esque. Well, we know he can take the minutes.
Yeah.
Like, if they were to go get, say, a Chikrin, like, all right, I just don't see
why.
Let's develop our own. You know, we got a whole lot of picks.
Because we haven't seen, I don't think, enough of any of the young defensemen to know what we have in any of them.
No, I would, as much as I want to see, like you didn't evaluate any of these guys, but like as much as I want to see Drysdale brought along the right way and this whole third pair thing makes sense, I also want to get, they don't have to play every game, but like this group of defensemen that they have in the AHL, let's give them all a month. Let's see what happens and then go from there after Christmas, reevaluate who should be on this team to start 2025. Make something of these guys. I'm tired of seeing veterans in the lineup who are not going to be here.
I guess I could envision, I understand why the Flyers in like February and March, they were floating the possibility of getting another defenseman. And it wouldn't be like a veteran, it would be a guy in his like mid-20s, because I do think a lot of that was driven by, and we're getting into Drysdale before we actually even get to the grade, but like a lot of that was driven by the idea of, we don't think Drysdale is ready for top 4 minutes yet, and if we want to develop him, we're going to need someone to push him down. I'm just intrigued to see how this offseason plays out, but I would love it if the Seeler-Drysdale pairing, if they found some way for that to be used as the third pair to start the year, and then let them earn their way up. Let Drysdale in particular, because we know Seeler can handle it now after 2 years of handling it. Let Drysdale earn his way up the lineup, and hopefully he does. And then hopefully by this time next year, we're talking about like, man, Drysdale is looking like, I'm not expecting next year for Jamie Drysdale to be his breakout year, but I want him to show real progress. And I want to be of the opinion this time next year that like, oh man, next year Jamie Drysdale might take that big old step.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
I want to see him thrive in at least the specialized roles.
Right.
Like, all right, you're going to play third pair minutes. Hopefully you don't suck.
Yeah.
And then the power play makes a dramatic improvement. It would still be like mediocre at best.
Third.
Yeah,
that
like,
would be good.
like he has a bunch of power play points and they're at 17% like that would be okay. Cool. So we do maybe have something, at least if he's not a number one, like roles you can play him in that will maximize the talents he does have.
One thing I do want to talk about before we leave the Seeler conversation, because I mentioned this in the piece, in the Die Hard piece on allphly.com. I know that the idea of culture can be overrated. Mm-hmm. I, however, do think that Nick Seeler, like, I've talked to enough people and I watched enough of this team to believe that Nick Seeler actually does legitimately provide intangible value. I cannot tell you, there were about probably like 2 or 3 players that unprompted, and I think Jonesy brought this up too to me, whether it was on the record or off the record, I don't remember. But there was a play, he wouldn't care. This is like a positive thing about Nick Seeler. There was a play in the October Dallas game where Travis Konechny takes a hard hit. It wasn't a dirty hit, but it was a hard hit. This is your best player, from Yanni Hakanpää, who's 6'7". He's a fucking giant. And Nick Seeler basically runs up to him, challenges him to a fight, and then beats the snot out of him. And I've heard multiple players tell me that like that was the moment when we were like, oh man, like these guys have my back. Like this is a team. This is a special group. Mm-hmm. Because like Nick Seeler should not be without hesitation running up to fight a dude who's like probably 5 inches taller than him and like an actual giant. And also he should not be kicking the crap out of him. And he did without even thinking. And that was a galvanizing moment for the team that didn't get talked about a lot. I also look at the block shots. Mm-hmm. I am very skeptical. And like, I don't know this for a fact, but you're talking about Cam York jumped from 69 blocks as a freshman. Nice. As a rookie, I guess, to 174 this season. I am skeptical that he does that if Nick Seeler is not on this team, setting the example, and then Nick Seeler, with another one of his ridiculous blocks, comes back to the bench, and everybody's like hammering him on the back. Great job, Seals! Like, that rallies the troops. And then Cam York's for a little further down the bench, and kind of like, I want that. I want to get that. I want that feeling. And then he's in the heat of the moment. He's going to be just a little bit more willing to block a shot. I think Nick Seeler did legitimately provide intangible, unmeasurable value to this team, which is why I don't have a major issue with them re-signing him, because I think that's real. I think even if it's intangible, I think it's real.
Olipop, huh?
Oh,
Olipop.
Intangible value in soda form.
Olipop is the world's first functional soda with a classic soda taste and the benefits of plant-based fiber, prebiotics, and other botanical ingredients to support gut health. Olipop is a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of fiber per can. 2 out of 3 Americans say they suffer from digestive issues, and 95% of Americans don't get the daily recommended amount of fiber. Olipop is tackling both of these issues with a drink that tastes just like soda. Prebiotic fiber is the food source for the beneficial probiotic bacteria in your gut, and Olipop has 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can that can help support your digestive health. Listen, I tell you about the health benefits of Olipop all the time. It's a beautiful day again. Summer is coming. You're going to want a nice, delicious drink a nice little cocktail that might not be the worst thing in the world for you. Well, we've got those. We've been making them with Olipop. We've been trying some different things. I've been telling you about the strawberry, vanilla, and tequila that I love. We're calling it the Chaos Agent, by the way. That was submitted by a listener. It might have been Flyers fan 39. I can't remember who said it, but Charlie told me he's been experimenting with some Olipops.
Yeah,
Who said the orange?
I tried the orange squeeze. Good drink. Enjoyed it. There's always a lot of like unused leftover liquor from parties. So there was some of that
Peek behind the curtain into Charlie's life.
There was some of that like Smirnoff red, white, and blue flavor stuff. And I was like, okay, there's citrus in this. I'll see how that mixes because I need to get rid of this.
Yeah.
Like at some point, I need to finish this thing. It can't just because this is from like 2 summers ago, I think.
Oh wow.
I'm like, all right, let's see how this goes.
Now's the time.
It was pretty tasty, honestly. I mean, I didn't like go heavy. I did probably like a little bit less than a shot because it might have been disgusting. And also I didn't feel like getting drunk on that.
Smirnoff red, white, and blue. Listen,
yeah, but it was pretty tasty. And I think it was primarily because the orange squeeze is legitimately good.
get rid of your unused liquor with Olipop. It'll kill even the worst crap left in your house. No, listen, Olipop, we've been messing around with it. It's been a lot of fun coming up with some different cocktails and stuff. Where do you get it? Well, there's a bunch of places. They just recently launched at Wawa. 2 flavors available there, the classic root beer and the strawberry vanilla. You can make your Chaos Agent right from Wawa, and all sorts of different flavors, as Charlie just outlined. You can also get it online at drinkolipop.com as well as Amazon. And you can use the code PHLY20 for 20% off your next order of Olipop. Discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscription orders. You can also get it in over 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and GoPuff. I'm telling you, go to drinkolipop.com, use code PHLY20 because, makes us look good.
Sure
All
does.
right, we have some super chats. Catch up on some super chats.
Yeah.
Before we get to our third defenseman we've covered.
All right.
We'll start with JH.
Rum and tropical punch. You're welcome.
All right. I can see that.
Give that a go.
I can see that.
Give that a go.
I love a punch flavor. I didn't know there was a punch flavor.
I think rum is a very good mixer liquor.
Yeah, you usually need
rum and gin.
Yeah.
Great. Like, I'm not going to order a rum straight. I like the taste of whiskey. I will absolutely order a scotch on the rocks or a bourbon on the rocks or whatever, or bourbon neat. I would never do that for gin or rum, but I like those if I go to like a nice cocktail bar.
Yeah.
I will actively seek out like gin cocktails. So I think they're great. And rum is like a tier below, but still very good.
And we have a super chat from Steve Hanatko. Hi all, gettable D-man to pair with Sanheim, go.
These are so tough because
Shane
like
Goss's bear.
How fun would that be?
We tried that.
Not hard enough.
You know who I would say, and this is I don't think he's actually gettable, but he is going to be a free agent at the end of next year. I think a Victor Hedman Travis Sanheim pairing would be
Charlie,
awesome.
you put the Victor Hedman thing in my head like months ago, and I keep like it constantly. I'm like, it's doable.
Because like if there's one guy who would be able to erase his mistakes, it would be Victor Hedman.
How about Shawn Walker?
No, they never tried that. Well,
we're just doing retreads.
They're both right side defensemen now, though. So
are we still doing? I thought we weren't doing sides anymore.
But we just talked about how we wanted to keep him on the right side. And Shawn Walker is actually right-handed.
Well, so what?
So we're going to put Walker on the left side?
Walker has played some left, though, right?
He did a little bit in LA.
Yeah, because they have like a bunch of right-handed defensemen.
So many right-handed defensemen.
Them and what was it? The Winnipeg team a few years ago when they had like that stacked decor and it was like all right-handed guys. And they're like 2/3 of the right-handed defensemen in the league play for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, they had Buffalo and they had Trouba. Yeah, that was weird.
So I forget what we were talking
So
about.
we're on
to Cam
York.
York now. And Cam York, he gets a B from Charlie, which is a fine grade for Cam York.
I was just a little surprised. Most people would disagree with this.
Interesting.
I don't know if I disagreed because I don't know like how great the first half of his season was. Like the first half of the season seemed so much, or at least up until, Christmas, whatever, seemed so much about Travis Sanheim. And then York like seemed to slowly, oh wow, you know what? He's been playing really well. Oh, he's been playing better than Sanheim.
Yeah, I do think.
Has he surpassed? Like I think
York was better than Sanheim over the final 2 months.
By the end of the season, I think he was playing better.
It was a slow burn with York.
Yeah, but I don't know if he did anything like other than just look solid for a majority of the 82 games he played. I think B is a very, very fair grade. Like, yeah, okay.
I just got the sense that everyone at the end of the season was real high on Cam York. And I think they were. It's very interesting to me that the numbers don't really support that. Like 30 points in 82 games, that's good. It's not amazing.
Second-year player, that's fine.
505 points per 60, 0.72, which is more like third pair territory in terms of a score at 5-on-5. The play driving, though, jumps out at me because you look at him and you watch him and you think he should be a play driver. Now, 2 seasons ago in his first year with the Flyers, his first almost full season, he was graded out very well by 5-on-5 underlying metrics. This year, he's in the 42nd percentile. Not awful, but nothing great. Yeah. It's probably like somewhere in that, second pair to third pair range in that borderline. I think he's better than that. I think maybe the numbers, these models may have missed something in Cam York's play, but I've seen too many times where I look at a guy and I'm like, his numbers should be better. The numbers are wrong. And then 3-4 years later, I'm like, yeah, I should have trusted the numbers. Case in point, Ivan Provorov, where if you looked at the advanced models for years, they were saying, hey, Provorov's more or less like just a dude who gets a lot of minutes, but he doesn't do that great in them. And we're like, no, the numbers will eventually match up with the eyes. And what ended up happening was the eyes that ultimately matched up with the numbers. Yeah. So I'm not willing to dismiss the fact that the numbers don't show Cam York as a play-driving defenseman yet. And that's more or less why I gave him a B.
I think, in the role he was in, it was going to be tough for him to have, he's not a top-pair defenseman in my mind.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think some people, by the end of the year, were looking at him as a guy who can be.
I think maybe he can be. But, if he's going to take the toughest matchups at where he is right now, he's just not. He might hold his own. He might look better than expected. There was a lot of things he was doing at the end of the year. He was legitimately good at defending the rush. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, we've said...
Yeah, you're right.
And we've had this conversation, and you're going to drive it more than I do because I look at the numbers. I don't interpret them, all that much. But, if there's one thing the models sometimes leave out is, the actual defense. Because if you're in your own zone and the other team is taking shot attempts, that's bad.
That's bad.
But if you are able to limit them in some way, whether it's you're good one-on-one or you are a good shot blocker, which he's become, I think that stuff makes you more valuable than the numbers. But that said, you probably want to have the chance to score more goals than your opponent when you're on the ice if you're going to be a top 4 defenseman.
I think it's a reasonable point to make that he is developing into a legitimately above average defensive defenseman. I think my concern about York long-term is that the offense hasn't developed as much as I want it to. Mm. And I'm not just talking about scoring because, look, yeah, it's great when defensemen score goals and get points, but, in the end, their job is to play the defense. Yeah. Their job is to get the puck to the guys who do the scoring. York has not turned into the kind of puck mover that I expected he was going to be. It's not that he can't pass. He has puck skills, but he's not driving the rush in the same way that Walker did.
The other thing about him is I feel like this is the second year now where it was a very slow build into him actually playing legitimately good hockey.
Well, last year he didn't even make the team.
That's what I mean. This year was better, but it seems like he's a slow starter. And I feel like if you're going to bump him up from a B, it needs to be a consistently good. We can't wait for you to be good until January. You need to be good from the jump.
It's fair.
If you're going to be an A player.
What is interesting, just in terms of raw points, So his first 2 years in the league comes out to 84 games. So basically a full season between the 2 years.
Wait, really? Because I thought he played 82 this year.
I'm talking age 21, 22. His two previous seasons.
His 2 previous years. Gotcha.
Comes out to 84 games. 30 points. This year, full season, 30 points.
30 points.
Raw points, he's made no improvement. He's doing exactly what he did basically since he came into the league. And
the defensive play has gotten significantly better, and I love to see that.
It absolutely has. I'm just going to say like you did. And this is what I always said about Travis Sanheim. I'm gonna need some offense, dude. You're never gonna be fucking like a shutdown defenseman number. We can trust you with more minutes than your offensive numbers because you actually take away one of their best players. It's just not who you're gonna be. I'm gonna need more than 30 points. Yeah. I just need more. And Travis Sanheim, to his credit, it took him a while, but I can live with what he's given you, especially considering he didn't play on the power play and this team has no power play. All right, the offensive numbers I can live with. York, I just need to see a little more of that offense.
I don't care as much about the points. I know you do, obviously, and you got that from Sanheim this year. Finally,
someone has to score.
I care more with York. I care more about him developing as a puck mover. I care more about him becoming a more effective generator of rush chances, a more effective guy at just transitioning from defense to offense. I don't think he's terrible at it, but I think his skill set is such that he should be better at it.
And I think what we saw, especially with some of his defensive improvements, that can lead to more rush chance. He can now take that part of his game and lead it to that transition. When you block a shot or when you seal a guy off on the wall, okay, now there's a puck battle. You win it, and then you get it up to the forwards. That's puck moving. And now that he has that defense part down, he can develop that. And to your point about the numbers, what I think Shawn Walker did offensively and what he actually, the numbers don't necessarily match the perception. He was a good puck moving defender. He didn't score that much. He had a decent number of goals and some shorties that made you think he's got some skill. But the assist numbers aren't what you think they are, considering, didn't he lead launch 3 breakaways a game?
Seemed like it.
So just a little bit more of that from York as well. We can now go to Rasmus Ristolainen. Charlie gave him a C.
I did.
And I thought that was pretty damn high.
I gave him a C because I think when he played, he was very good. Obviously, didn't score a lot of points. 4 points in 31 games. It's rough, but I view that as a byproduct of what they asked him to do. Yeah. They asked him to completely remake his game, turn into a defensive defenseman who is actually good at defense. And you look at the play driving percentile rank, 91st percentile. Pretty damn good. He's not getting any power play time, wasn't getting as many minutes, certainly not as many minutes as he got in Buffalo, but not a ton of minutes. So the raw offensive numbers, if he continues to be in this role, are never going to look that good. I'm not going to kill him for it. I'd like to see a few more cheapy secondary assists to make it look a little bit more palatable. But on the whole, I'm cool with it. My big problem with Risto is that he was good when he played. He missed most of the season.
I can't believe he played 31 games. In my mind, he played 7 games. I remember very little of Rasmus Ristolainen on the ice this season.
Well, because he didn't get in the lineup until the end of November.
Okay.
It was right around Thanksgiving when he finally joined the team as a player.
Okay.
Then he played pretty much straight through until I believe it was the beginning of February when he got hurt with what ultimately was revealed to be the ruptured tricep. There was hope he was going to be back. He never came back. Look, I'm happy with what he's turned into. I think in 31 games, he showed that the previous year, his transformation was not fake. It was real.
Yeah.
He did transform into a different player, but it doesn't matter if you don't actually play.
You do got to be playing. I just don't. Yeah, I just don't. I don't know that he can ever be better than a C. I feel like before they fixed him, he was functionally an F. He was real bad.
In terms of actual impact, he was an F. You could argue that, he was getting, too tough usage and that played into it. Sure. But there's only so much you can grade on a curve when a guy, every time he's out there, is getting absolutely obliterated by the other team.
So in a way, I feel like this is like I never went to class and I just showed up for the final and somehow I got a C. Like this is like a good C. You know what I mean?
C.
Yeah.
So you think this is too high?
I was very proud
it's
of
too
those
high.
C's.
I don't know that it's too high. I also don't know that it's like a bad grade. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair. There's also an element where, and this is, I think, a collective disappointment. We didn't get to see playoff Risto.
That's all I wanted in my whole
Just
life.
want to see playoff Risto once.
Would have been an A.
Although, like, I still don't understand, like, if he ruptured his tricep ages ago, like, why are we just getting the surgery? I don't know why they do this. Like, could he have possibly come back at the end of the season? Maybe?
The way that Briere described it, because he was asked about this during exit interviews, that they believed that this was an injury that he could rehab his way out of. It wasn't going to require surgery, and that he could rehab his way out of it, and then he could come back. And apparently when he started to ramp back up again in mid-March or in early March, I think is when he first got back on the ice, they found out he couldn't and he was going to need the surgery. Now, my question is, why didn't he then get the surgery right then and there? I don't know.
I guess if they just roll the dice on this, he can fix it with rehab. It's going to work once.
Yeah,
I feel like we have this conversation all the time.
I was just thinking that too. Like, does it ever actually get fixed with rehab, or does it get fixed and then they just hurt it again and then they have to get surgery?
Yeah.
I mean, none of us are doctors. I guess we could try to find one who could talk about the general
If you're a
terms
doctor,
of a ruptured tricep.
slide into those DMs. I want to talk about triceps.
You know what it wasn't? You know what it wasn't for Rasmus Ristolainen for a great majority of this season?
What's that, Bill?
Game time.
Hey.
Definitely not game
That was
time.
good.
But it's game time for everybody out there. Game time is the place for last-minute ticket deals with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for pretty much anything. You know about the last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I'm looking at this Social D concert on Sunday at the Fillmore.
No,
I'm like,
you're going.
Oh, you better go to that.
I'm like, there's just always something. Whenever I buy tickets for stuff, Ava's like, I told you about this plan like 3 times and you just erased it from your memory every time. Well, guess what? Now I can wait till Sunday. And I might even get a better deal. You have the flash deals with Game Time as well. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the Risto grades a C, and I guess that's whatever. I don't like. He was good when he was in, and the point of the season he played is like the most forgettable part, like on the ice, because so much other shit was going. It seems like that was a chaotic time.
Yeah,
like it's the holidays, it's the Disney on Ice trip, Gauthier, and then Hart, and it's so much shit, and then the trade deadline, and like Risto's hurt now, like a whole bunch of defensemen got hurt, so it's like, oh yeah, just throw him in that mix. And we're not exactly excited about him. It's the other guys we were worried about. I feel like Kelly, like he didn't play this year. Like it's just whatever.
No.
But a C, I suppose. He was good in the games he played in, but didn't play enough. That's fair. We go to Mark Staal, gets a C. And all I have to say about this grade is I give the coaching staff an A for usage.
Fair.
You told us you weren't going to do it. I didn't believe you. And I was wrong. You actually you only played him 35 times, and that's with a decor that was non-existent for the final 2 months of the season.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate the way he was used. I don't appreciate anything he did.
This one feels high
for the
to me.
beginning part of the season. For the beginning part of the season.
What would you give him, Kelly?
He stinks. I would have given him a D.
But he really didn't.
Says who?
I think
the
he
numbers.
stunk.
I don't like those.
I think
I saw him with my eyeballs. He stunk.
like when they were playing Eric Johnson over him later in the year, I was like, there might be a reason for this. Like, I think Mark Staal started to suck at the end. I thought when he played early in the year, he was completely
There
C.
were a few games where it was like,
he was
all right,
a perfectly good
he's
exact.
fine.
Like,
Yeah.
when they're using him as a 7 and he's playing 7.5 minutes,
Yeah.
dope. He was totally acceptable in those minutes. But like, I never wanted him on the team to begin with, so it's like hard to evaluate.
Yeah, I feel like that's the bias, is that a lot of people from the start were like, why is he here? They said they were going to use him as a 6-7. They used him as a 6-7. The games when he was at his worst were the games when he was being used as more than a 6-7. Like that game against Pittsburgh, the game where Cal Peterson couldn't stop a beach ball. Mark Staal was horrific. But in large part, he was horrific because Jamie Drysdale got hurt midway through that game, and they suddenly had to use Mark Staal as a top 4 defenseman, and he couldn't do it because he just couldn't keep up with Jake Gensel and Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. Like, he just can't. He's not that player anymore. When they used him in the role that they intended to and wanted to use him in, he was perfectly fine. He didn't get crushed at 5-on-5. He produced a little bit of offense. He apparently was a good guy in the room. You know, a lot of guys talked about how he was helpful in terms of giving advice to them, in terms of leaning on his, 17 years in the NHL.
He's old.
I think he was perfectly acceptable in his role, and the Flyers did a good job of fighting the temptation to give him more than what he could handle most of the time.
All right, I don't want to go back to this because it's Bill's thing, but you're grading him based on the role that he was bought in for. Mm-hmm. What was Nick Delorier brought here to do?
Okay, well, again, maybe
I'm really just fucking with you.
If the role of Nick Delorier is to be bad at hockey but just fight,
and fight people,
then sure. But I think that an enforcer can fight and also be half decent at hockey.
He can.
Nick Delorier can't.
But that's not why he was signed.
Do you think that anybody on the Flyers thought that he was good at hockey? Because he never was.
I think so.
Oh, okay. Well, good for them.
That's cute.
They saw something.
Do you remember the GM who signed him?
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, oh, that's a great sign. And then, oh, no, wait, it was him.
That's
the guy
true.
who I needed a thesaurus to describe his intelligence. We go to Egor Zamula now, D+. I think this might be a little... By the end of the year, he might have just sucked. But I thought he showed some signs along the way. He made the power play good for like those 2 weeks. Remember those 2 weeks?
The power play was interesting.
Remember those 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad they gave Zamula a shot. I think we answered the question, should he be part of the future? Nah, I'm good. But I think, like, I'm going to say, like, C- is probably fine, but, like, C-, D+, what's the difference?
I'm not ready to give up on Zamula, but I really didn't see anything that tells me that he has to be part of the future. If you trade him this offseason, sure. If you keep him around and Ronnie Attard outplays him in camp and you got to waive Zamula, sure. Like, I'd like to see him take another step, but the guy didn't drive play, scored at a decent rate, largely because he had a stretch where he put up some power play points. I don't see anything spectacular out of Zamula.
No.
But, like, hey, if you want to keep him around and hope he's a solid third-pair defenseman, sure. It's just he wasn't a solid third-pair defenseman this year.
No, I really wanted Zamula to be something, and I was excited that this year he was going to, just by sheer force, be given the opportunity to show what he could be in the NHL. And like Bill said, there were flashes, but there just wasn't enough.
Ultimately, coming into this season, it was like, oh, we're going to get to see something out of Egor Zamula. And Nick Seeler, cool, he's there. He plays a role. And now it's like, Nick Seeler's something.
Yeah.
And Egor Zamula, if he is able to turn himself in at some point to Nick Seeler, that would be an incredible step up.
Right.
I guess where I'm at is I would have been very angry in training camp, at the end of training camp, if they would have let Egor Zamula leave, like, they waive him, he gets claimed, it's over. If they would have let him go for nothing because they never gave him a shot.
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
But my point is that now they've given him the shot. And if they now were to let him leave for nothing, I would be like, you know what? They gave him the shot.
No,
he didn't do a ton with it. Maybe there's still something there. And if they keep him around, and maybe I will not be mad if he's one of the top 6 defensemen to start next season. Won't be mad about that. He's still young. You still grab something out of him. But now I feel like they gave him the chance.
Yes.
He didn't show me a ton. And now if you look at it in training camp and you're like, I'd rather Ronnie Attard make this team and Emil Andre is just better now than Zamula is now, and Andre has a lot higher upside, I'm cool with them moving on from Zamula because I feel like they gave him the look that he deserved and he didn't run with it.
Zamula, outside of just NHL experience, I'm not looking at him like when I said, let's just rotate these dudes. Like, he's in the same category for me now as Attard, Ginning, and Andre whenever they deem him actually ready. Like, None of them have to play 82. None of them have to play 50.
Yeah.
Let's just see.
Yeah.
And I don't see him as I don't see him as a step above them, even given he got the time.
The one thing I will disagree with you on that is, and this will go back to, this is a preview of the conversation we're going to have in a second about Erik Johnson. I would not want Ronnie Attard, if he's with the NHL team, I don't want him playing 35 games. Like, now, if you have him spend some time in the AHL, if you can get him through waivers, but like, one of the reasons why people lost their minds yesterday about they're going to bring Erik Johnson back, or they might bring Erik Johnson back. Like, I don't want a rookie as the 7. I want a rookie playing. If you're bringing back Erik Johnson to be Mark Staal and play 35 games in a number 7 role, yeah, he's a good dude. That's fine, because I don't want Ronnie Attard or Emil Andre in that role. I think that is a waste of their time. They should be in the AHL if that's their role. Whereas it's not a waste of Erik Johnson's time. That guy's just trying to get to 1,000 games.
Yeah.
That's fair.
No, Attard is it Attard who's waiver exempt?
I believe Attard will no longer be waiver exempt starting this camp.
So he's in the
He's
Zamula.
the new Zamula.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
I was not accounting for that, because no, I don't want any of these dudes playing the 7 role.
Yeah.
It's just
I want
kind
them
of
playing.
you're going to put a lot of miles on, man.
Yeah.
You're going to be
Yeah.
tagging up back to Lehigh a lot.
Yeah.
But if someone's waiver exempt, then that kind of changes the situation. We go to Erik Johnson now, who also scores a D+. Whatever about how he played.
Yeah.
The only thing I want to talk about, EJ, is they really going to bring him back?
I don't think they're ruling it out. I just think that the way they look at it is he's a good dude. He fills the Mark Staal role. He wasn't awful in his time here. And we need a vet to be the 7 because we don't want a rookie playing that role anyway. I think that's the way they look at it.
Do you need a 7, or can't you just call somebody up?
They like the idea of having just a reliable vet guy who they can plug in, but who also can sit for 3 weeks. And
so that stupid John Tortorella can do dumb 11-7 for no reason for half the beginning.
Yeah,
of
but
the
they
year.
weren't doing the 11-7 to get Staal in. They were doing the 11-7 because everyone was healthy.
Yeah.
And Drysdale got traded for, and they had to play him, but everybody else was playing well.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't like Staal was getting. I mean, he played a couple times because, like, you gotta give a guy something in case somebody gets hurt, and he's not cold because he's been sitting for a month and a half. So he's got to get some games.
Yeah.
But I guess I understand why fans freaked out about the Erik Johnson report from Kevin Kurz yesterday, but it fits with the fact that, like, you don't really want rookies functioning as the 7.
No, you don't.
He would be I guess, perfectly acceptable 7 in my mind.
Why not Zamula? Like, Zamula's not a rookie, and he's a low-ceiling dude. Like, this is what he's going to be in the NHL. Put him in that role now.
Yeah, but I still think with somebody like Zamula, he's still developing. And if you're going to decide you want Zamula on your team, I think he should be getting at least 60 games.
I just, like, he's not anything special.
That's the thing.
There's nothing, like, you're developing him into what?
Yeah.
Like, he's already what he's going to be. Maybe he gets marginally better. Like,
now I'm defending Zamula.
Yeah.
Look, I've seen defensemen, like, look at Nick Seeler. Nick Seeler looked like a plug at age 28. Now he looks like a pretty good defenseman.
And he got there barely playing. Like, like, he was almost out of hockey a couple years ago.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, I'm not, even though I am in no way, shape, or form sold on Egor Zamula, if he sticks around, if they decide we want to have him on this roster, he's still part of the present day plan. I do not like the idea of them saying, well, he's part of the present day plan, but he's part of the present day plan as a 30 game a year 7. I don't think that helps anyone, because the only reason why you're keeping him as part of the plan is because you think he might have more there. And you're not going to get that theoretical more if you never play him.
I just don't know how much more is there. Like, if someone has to play a little bit, it might as well be the guy whose whole career is going to be playing a little bit.
But maybe
like,
it won't be.
Jamie Drysdale is your lowest graded regular defenseman.
Ouch.
Comes in at a D-.
Yeah, it was real bad.
The return in the Cutter Gauthier trade. Those first 2 games, though, man, we'll always have them. Dry Guy the Fly Guy. Get your shirts at allphly.com.
Point.
I still think there's plenty of unreached potential with this guy.
Yeah.
Do not get me wrong. But his season, and it is due quite a bit to the injury, hopefully. But, man, that was a disappointment. What we saw out of him on the ice when he was here was a major disappointment after he's the return for Cutter Gauthier.
I guess there's no grace here for injury.
I mean, it's certainly an extenuating circumstance, and it's why I'm not giving up on him. Even if he didn't have the injury, I wouldn't give up on him. I would just say, man, they need to rebuild this guy from the ground up. The fact that there was clearly something bothering him from the start makes me believe that this is not necessarily who Jamie Drysdale is, even accounting for the fact that he was hurt. Yeah. But it doesn't change the fact that he was bad.
That's fair.
Like, these numbers are not good.
He was not good.
Like, sub third pair, 5-on-5 points per 60, 6th percentile in play driving. He didn't pass the eye test most of the time.
Sure didn't.
There were a few games where you're like, oh, yeah, I can see it. And then he'd deliver a game like the Montreal game where you're like, this dude looks like he would be an average AHL player. I still think they can get more out of him. I think he still has high-end potential. I just don't think he looked anywhere near that last season, which is why I guess I understand why people are so frustrated with him. I just would like people to take more of the wider view and acknowledge that even the team straight up said, like, a week after the trade, Jonesy goes on our show and is like, hey, this is all kind of gravy what we're getting from Drysdale this year because we know he needs a lot of work. Like,
no,
they know.
He told us he wasn't developed properly, probably shouldn't have. He made it to the NHL way too soon. Basically alluded to the fact he probably shouldn't even be here now.
Yeah.
And didn't say that exactly, but
hinted it.
Basically said it, you know, like, so we're just developing him here now and it is what it is. I think there's plenty of potential with Jamie Drysdale, but he wasn't good.
No.
And it did lower what I think his ceiling is.
Yeah,
in my
you
mind.
said that.
A couple people were like, that's such a hot take. I'm like, if you believe he still has number one defense potential, that's the hot take. He could. He absolutely could. But it's 21? Based on zero evidence.
22, I think
22?
now. I think he turned
22. It
22.
is not evidence-based to believe he can be a number one defenseman.
Well, I mean, that's like anyone that you draft that you're like, this guy could be a number one. Like, there's really no evidence that anyone can be a number one defenseman until they are a number one defenseman.
But he's played in the NHL. Yeah. Like, his resume exists. Yeah. It's not a prospect.
Bill, you make a fair point because while I think that the tools that he has and the skill set that he has, I think in theory, it could turn into a number one defenseman. But I 100% agree with you that if you are doing fair and objective analysis, you cannot just throw out 3 years of a guy's career because
never do that.
Is a bunch of data that you don't like.
Yeah, you don't like the numbers. That's why you would ignore them.
So if in 5 years he's like a solid number two, like, are you satisfied with the trade?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a home run, but it was like a solid double given the circumstances.
The circumstances.
I don't know how much better they could have possibly done.
Well, there were other guys on the table. Like, we've heard Marco Rossi's name. I don't know what Marco Rossi is going to be, but if in 5 years Marco Rossi is a 85-point number one center and Jamie Drysdale is a fine number two who gets you 35 points and is decent on the power play, then yeah, you could say that I'm curious what was behind door number two there.
I've also heard Arbor Xhekaj was mentioned. And like, listen, I find him interesting and there's probably more there. But like, if that's the trade, it's like him and what?
Yeah, right.
You know, like
he's just least, big.
Like, I see some sort of potential in Drysdale. I'm not saying he's going to be a bust, but it's like the way we just talked about Kimmo Timonen, maybe he was a first pair guy playing on your second pair, like more that than the Norris number one dude.
If they would have done a Gauthier, even if they would have gotten like a first round pick back or whatever, I guess maybe if they would have gotten a first, because then you would assume it's Montreal, it would have been early. But like, if they would have done a trade where the true centerpiece was that guy, oh my God, we would all be like, the Flyers are turning the clock back to 1970. Because but I'm just saying, like, you got Drysdale, who, whether he pans out or not, is at least a modern NHL defenseman.
I'll tell you what kind of surprised me about how much they love Drysdale, because like, clearly this was a target.
Yes.
There were other dudes who they had their eye on, and when it was like this in a second round pick, they're like, all right, let's fucking do it.
Right.
They've said they believe the way to win in the postseason is big defensemen. Now, I don't think they think it's like, oh, yeah, Eric Johnson is like, no, you need like big mobile defensemen.
And I don't think they
Actually
think that every single one of their defensemen has to be huge.
It's a little interesting to me that that's what they think the archetype is. Now, yeah, you make special exceptions for special players,
right?
But they're like, they love this dude and he doesn't fit that one mold. So, but that
Definitely
also gives me like, okay, they're not as rigid in this.
Right.
We need this for this role.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is if they would have traded Gauthier for Arbor-Xhekaj, you'd be like, oh my God, these guys only like big dudes who hit.
Yeah. The A you gave out, the highest grade you gave to a defenseman goes to Shawn Walker.
Highest grade I gave to anyone.
Bring him
he's the only
home.
A, yeah.
Only A.
That's wild.
Bring him
'cause-
home.
Yeah.
Bring him home.
He's playing almost 18 minutes a night, I think, for the, what is it?
Avalanche.
Yeah.
Yeah, 17-24. I couldn't remember if it was 18 or 19. For the Avs right now, he's like functionally their number 5. Great trade, I would say. They did what they had to do. They got their first round pick. I wish this man well. I hope he gets paid a big old bag of money. I don't want to give it to him.
Totally fair. But he was great here.
He was.
Look at these numbers. Like low-end first pair scoring rates, 97th percentile in Philadelphia in terms of play driving. He passed the eye test. He was a huge part of the way the Flyers were able to play.
Yes.
In the first 2/3 of the season with the heavy focus on transition offense and attacking off the rush. Like,
it was so fun.
One of the big reasons why they were able to do that was because Shawn Walker excelled at that type of hockey. And I don't think that should be brushed aside because his presence allowed them to find their identity as a team. And I think that is incredibly important, not just for now, but for the long term, because now they know that if we got defensemen who can get our forwards the puck, we can excel as a rush-based transition team. And then part of these grading exercises is about expectations. My expectations were in the floor for Shawn Walker going into the season. I didn't know if he was going to be an every night defenseman. And he ended up maybe being their best one.
No,
at least their second best one.
When we're doing season previews, we're just like, well, I don't know what this guy is.
Yeah. Like
I have no idea who Shawn Walker is.
The year before he later told me this, that he didn't feel anywhere near 100% until like February of that season. So it was unclear. And even before that injury, he was nothing more than a perfectly fine third pair, maybe can play second pair sometimes type of guy. He was a guy. Yeah. And then this year, he showed that when healthy and when in a system that plays to his talents, he can be real, real good.
There were not many first-round picks moved at the trade deadline. Shawn Walker went for one, and I think it was deserved.
Yeah. Real quick, before we get into the goal, we got a super chat from Rory. I'm on the Byfield offer sheet wagon. This is a reference.
Never gonna happen.
Reference from yesterday.
No one's ever going to do it again, Bill.
There were some like recently.
Yeah, but
Montreal and Carolina had their back and forth because they were mad at each other.
I was going to say, everyone got mad about it.
Here's what I'll say.
Look, get the fuck. You're the Flyers. Look, you're the bad guys.
Here's what I'll say about offer sheets. I love Quentin Byfield. I am not, like, in theory, I am not opposed to talking about offer sheets and being like, yeah, Flyers should try to do that. But, and this is a trap I think fans fall into, especially in the offseason. If your mental, if you were given the GM's job and your entire offseason plan is centered around an offer sheet, like, that's not realistic. They never happen. Like, yes, it's a fun thing to talk about, but like, that can't be the offseason plan because they just never freaking happen.
That can't be the centerpiece of your offseason, especially like if you build your offseason around a free agent. It's like you make the pitch, you're going to pay them whatever. You can do everything right in the offer sheet process, and the team just goes, no, we match, and it's over. Like, also, with the offer sheets, personally, I think if you're going to send them, if you're going to offer sheets, like, it's not against a team like LA. It's a team that you think you can take advantage of their cash on hand.
Yeah.
It's Winnipeg. It's Nashville.
Yes.
It's Tampa back when they stole Chris Gratton.
It was Arizona.
Yeah, like they got Chris Gratton because it was like, we're paying him $10 million year one. You don't have $10 million.
Yeah.
Right.
He's ours now. Thanks.
You don't have that cash on hand.
That's what they tried to do with Shea Weber. You can't match the signing bonus. Good luck. Like one of their owners had to go into his own pocket to keep Shea Weber.
Yeah.
That's how I think you make an offer sheet work. The Kings play in the second biggest media market in the world in they play in the fucking Staples Center. I know it's crypto or whatever, but they play in the fucking Staples Center.
Yeah.
Like, you're not stealing one of their guys unless they just don't want it.
Yeah, but my point is like Rory, I'm not saying that you're wrong to throw that out there because that would be real fun. And like the Flyers should be kicking the tires and talking with agents and broaching the subject of like, hey, if we were throwing an offer sheet at you, would your client be interested in signing it? And how much would it, and then trying to figure that out. Not saying that they shouldn't be doing the legwork. I'm just saying that like if you have in your head the dream offseason for the Flyers and offer sheet, insert player here is at the top of the list, like that's not a realistic offseason plan. It's just not.
It isn't. I forget the joke I was going to make, so we're going to move on. I can't believe now, like, this is just so funny. What are you guys going to talk about every day all offseason? We've done one topic. We're at an hour 20. We're not done it. We're going to talk about the goalies now. Egor, Sam Ersson's the only goalie he graded. He got a B-. I think we've spent plenty of time sharing our opinions on Sam Ersson's season. Good for him. I want to see him take a step. Also, he was in a no-win situation, and when he was getting normal rest, he looked fucking great. Yeah. And then he played 18 out of 20, and he didn't look great.
I don't want to get into a whole discussion about this, but it's higher than I thought it would have been.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I very much graded him on a curve in the sense that my thing is that he very much passed the eye test for me, and the numbers matched my eyes when he wasn't being run into the ground.
That's fair.
No, that's like his just basic save percentage. You look at it like hockeyreference.com and you break his season up into portions and you're like, that's exactly what I saw. Yeah. Like I saw, okay, he's struggling. Okay, he's getting better. Okay, he's better than Carter Hart. Oh, fuck. Yeah. He just played every day. Like, it's no good. Yeah. So Sam Ersson we've talked about, but the one thing before we get out of here, Egor Zamula, Charlie, you can run us through his situation a little bit, and then let's go.
Yeah, so this has been rumored for a couple weeks. Today, apparently, it was finalized. He was traded to SKA, which is the overarching team that has the rights to Matvei Michkov, which is interesting. It's a big deal. It's a big deal for his career on a number of levels because not only was he traded to SKA, he was then signed to a 3-year contract, which, as we see with Michkov, unless they find a way out of it, that means that Zaragon is going to spend the next 3 years in Russia. I don't think this is a bad thing, though. I don't think this is in any way, shape, or form a bad thing. Here's what you got to understand about Zaragon's situation. He was with an organization in Russia, they're like a Russian league organization, their team he was with this year, that did not have a KHL team. So the highest that he could go up in that organization was to the VHL. The VHL is essentially the KHL's version of the AHL. He could only get to second-tier hockey with that organization. The fact that he was traded to SKA is a good thing because that means that now, in theory, he can play KHL hockey. Now, it's certainly not a guarantee that he will play KHL hockey this year. There are a few different routes that SKA can take. They could, in theory, have him be on their big team, the team that they have designs on winning the Gagarin Cup every year. Like, that is their big team. He could make that team and be a 20-year-old goalie for them, and that would be awesome. And, like, hell yeah, I'd love to see that. They also could do what they did with Michkov, which is loan him to Sochi, which is the other team that they basically run that is more or less their farm system that is also in the KHL. So he would be getting KHL games, so KHL experience, but not on a premier team because they basically park him there because they don't have a spot for him available or they don't think he's ready to play on the big KHL club. Or this is also an option. He's real young. He's only going to be in his draft plus 2 season. They could send him down to their VHL affiliate, and he could get a full season of essentially minor league KHL hockey. I don't know how it's going to play out. What I can tell you is that the 3-year contract should not be concerning to anyone. No. The next couple years, that's going to be spent here in Philly, figuring out what you have in Sam Ersson, what you have in Alexei Kolosov, what you have in Ivan Fedotov. Parking him in Russia for a few years and letting him develop over there, I don't think that's a bad thing at all because I never viewed him as a guy who was going to be ready in a year or two anyway.
Half the best goalies in the league right now came over in their mid-20s after spending time in Russia. This is fine. This is totally fine.
If I had to guess, my guess is that he will either be on Sochi or in the VHL. I am not expecting him to be on SKA, but they traded for him, so I guess you can't rule it out entirely.
Do we get to call SKA Flyers East now? The Flyers East.
I mean, do we want to? Because they won't even play Michkov. That's the problem.
That's for the best.
Sochi might be Flyers East.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
If he gets loaned,
I don't want Staal to
Mitchkov's coming over
Mitchkov.
anyway, so it's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, that's true.
All
Exactly.
right. That's it. That's all the time we have for you today.
Yay.
Before we get out of here, I got to remind you, you got to be a goddamn diehard. We just did 2 shows, like 3 hours worth of content almost, based on just 2 Charlie O'Connor diehard articles.
And there's so much more in those articles.
There's so much more to get to. We just scratched the surface of this stuff. So go to allphly.com, become a diehard. There's so many benefits, but honestly, what do you need outside of Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter? But there's a bunch of other stuff too. Allphly.com. Be a diehard. You get the premium content, access to the Discord, discount on merch. You get a free shirt. All sorts of stuff. You'll love it. That is all the time we have for you today. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. My name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. That's Kelly Hinkle. Go Sixers.
We all silly like the mayor.